Princess Ailerin had always believed space was quiet. She had been taught that the stars were calm, ordered, and obedient, just like her people. Every route was planned, every jump calculated, every risk reduced until nothing unexpected remained. That belief shattered the moment her royal ship exploded behind her. The blast threw her escape pod into a wild spin. Alarms screamed in a language older than most civilizations. Lights flickered. Gravity failed for a terrifying second, then returned too strong, pinning her to the seat. Ailerin gasped, her hands shaking as she tried to steady her breathing. This was not how heirs of the Lithari Empire were supposed to travel. Outside the small viewport, burning debris drifted like dying stars. Her ship, the pride of Lithar, was gone, destroyed by traitors from within her own court. Ministers she had trusted, guards who had sworn loyalty with ritual and blood. She was alone. The pod systems reported damage. Long-range communication was offline. Navigation was unstable. The nearest friendly system was days away, and enemy ships were already searching the area. Ailerin closed her eyes for a moment, fighting panic. Lithari princesses were trained from childhood to remain calm. Fear was considered a weakness, but fear came anyway. The pod dropped out of faster-than-light travel near an unimportant, barely charted world on the edge of known space. Ailerin had heard of this region only once, mentioned with mild disdain by one of her tutors. Human frontier space, he had said, disorganized, dangerous, best avoided. The pod crashed through the planet's thin atmosphere in a storm of fire. Ailerin cried out as the impact slammed her forward. Metal screamed. Something snapped inside the hull. Then, with a final violent shake, everything stopped. Silence returned, heavy, pressing. Smoke filled the pod. Ailerin coughed and forced the hatch open with what little strength she had. Cool air rushed in. She stumbled out and collapsed onto dark red sand under a sky painted with unfamiliar stars. Pain bloomed along her side. Her long silver hair was tangled and dirty, her royal garments torn and scorched. She pressed a hand to her ribs and felt warmth. Blood. Lithari blood shimmered faintly blue in the alien light. She was injured, stranded, hunted. Ailerin activated the pod's short-range beacon, knowing it was a risk. If her enemies found her first, there would be no mercy. Still, doing nothing meant death just as surely. She dragged herself away from the wreck and took shelter near jagged rocks, watching the sky with fearful patience. Hours passed. The cold deepened. Her strength faded. She wondered if this forgotten world would be her tomb, far from her people, her duties unfinished. Then she heard a sound she had never heard before. A deep, uneven roar cut through the air, growing louder by the second. Ailerin's eyes widened as something streaked across the sky, fast and reckless, trailing fire and smoke. It was not elegant, not smooth. It flew like it was daring the universe to stop it. The craft slowed suddenly and hovered above the crash site. Dust and sand blasted outward as it landed with a heavy thud not far from her hiding place. Ailerin's heart pounded. She tried to stand and failed. Her hand found a small defensive blade hidden in her sleeve. It was ceremonial more than practical, but it was all she had. The craft's hatch opened with a loud hiss. A figure jumped down, not floating gracefully like Lithari soldiers, but dropping hard onto the ground and bending his knees to absorb the impact. He was tall, broad, and moved with casual confidence. His armor was scratched and mismatched, clearly repaired many times. A helmet covered his head. The human. Ailerin had seen images before. Humans were considered young as a species, short-lived, emotion-driven, dangerous in strange ways. She had never expected to meet one like this, alone on a dead world. The human scanned the wreckage, then spoke into a device on his wrist. "Well, that's not cargo," he said. His voice was rough, accented, and oddly calm. "Definitely not cargo." He turned, and his visor locked onto Ailerin's position. She froze. "Hey," he called out. "You alive over there?" The translator woven into her ear activated automatically, converting his words into her language. Ailerin hesitated. Every lesson screamed at her to remain hidden to avoid contact, but she could not run, and something in his tone was not cruel. "I am alive," she said weakly. The human raised his hand slowly, palms open. "Okay, that's good, I'm coming closer, not gonna hurt you." He approached carefully, boots crunching on sand. When he reached her, he knelt down, studying her injuries with open concern. "Wow," he muttered, "you're really not from around here." Ailerin tried to sit up straighter, pride fighting pain. "I am Princess Ailerin of the Lithari Empire." The human blinked. Then instead of bowing or kneeling, he smiled slightly. "Jack," he said. "Jack Calder, pilot." Guest titles don't mean much if you're bleeding in the dirt. She did not know how to respond to that. Jack removed his helmet, revealing a human face marked by sun and old scars. His eyes were a warm brown, sharp and alert. He pulled out a small medical kit and began working without waiting for permission. "This might sting," he said. Ailerin flinched as he cleaned her wound and applied a sealing spray. The pain eased almost immediately. She stared at him in disbelief. "You helped me without asking anything in return," she asked. He shrugged. "You needed help." That answer confused her more than anything else. A sudden flash lit the sky. Jack looked up, his expression changing instantly. "Yeah, that's not good," he muttered. Ailerin followed his gaze and saw distant shapes moving between the stars. Sleek ships, hunting patterns, her enemies. "They are looking for me," she said. "You should leave. If they find you, they will destroy you." Jack snorted. "They're already trespassing in human space. That makes them my problem." He helped her to her feet and guided her toward his ship. It was smaller than Lithari vessels, ugly in design, covered in weapons that looked added as an afterthought. As they boarded, energy blasts struck the ground nearby. Jack swore under his breath and slammed the hatch shut. The ship lifted off at once, engines screaming like a living thing. Enemy fire chased them into the sky. Ailerin gripped the seat as Jack flew in ways no Lithari pilot ever would. He twisted Dove, cut engines suddenly, then reignited them with explosive force. Warning alarms blared constantly. "Are you not afraid?" she shouted over the noise. "Terrified," Jack replied cheerfully. "Doesn't mean I stop." He lured the enemy ships into a narrow asteroid field, weaving through spinning rocks with reckless precision. One by one, the pursuing ships crashed or exploded as they tried to follow his path. Finally, Jack punched the jump drive. Stars stretched into lines. Silence fell. Ailerin sagged back into her seat, exhausted. She stared at the human pilot who had saved her life without hesitation, without calculation. In that moment, she realized something unsettling. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was unpredictable. And that, she sensed, might change the fate of empires. Stars flowed back into sharp points of light as Jack's ship came out of hyperspace. The sudden quiet felt heavy after the chaos of flight. Princess Ailerin sat still for a moment, her hands resting on the seat, her breathing slow and controlled. Pain still lingered in her side, but the human's strange medicine had kept it from worsening. Jack Calder leaned back in the pilot's chair and let out a long breath. "Okay," he said to no one in particular. "That should buy us some time." Ailerin looked around the cockpit. It was nothing like the smooth, glowing bridges of Lithari ships. Wires were visible. Panels showed signs of burns and repairs. Small personal items were strapped into corners. A faded photo, a metal charm, a handwritten note taped near a console. This ship felt lived in. "You risked your life for me," Ailerin said quietly. "Why?" Jack glanced at her, then back to the controls. "Because you were in trouble." "That is not an answer," she replied. "Every action has a reason." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, that's what everyone keeps telling me." The ship drifted toward a dark cluster of asteroids. Hidden lights flickered among them. As they got closer, structures became visible, built directly into the rock. Docking bays opened like steel mouths. "What is this place?" Aileron asked. Home, Jack said. Well, sort of. The ship slid into a narrow bay and locked into place with a loud clang. The engines powered down. For the first time since the crash, true silence filled the air. Jack stood and offered her a hand. She hesitated only a second before taking it. His grip was firm and warm. He supported her weight easily as they moved through the ship and into the station. The outpost was rough and busy. Humans moved through the corridors with purpose. Some wore uniforms. Others wore simple work clothes. Conversation stopped as Aileron passed. Curious eyes followed her glowing skin and unfamiliar features. She's an alien, someone whispered. No kidding, another replied. Royal, maybe. Jack ignored them. Med Bay first, he said. The human doctors worked quickly, asking simple questions and respecting her space. They did not bow or show fear. They treated her like a patient, not a symbol. That unsettled her more than hostility would have. While they worked, alarms suddenly echoed through the station. A technician rushed in. Jack, we've got unknown ships entering the system. Not transponding. Jack's jaw tightened. They followed us. Aileron's heart sank. Then I have brought danger to you. Danger was already here, Jack replied. Now we just know its name. The station commander called an emergency meeting. Screens filled with star maps and threat markers. Human ships were few and clearly inferior in size and polish compared to the enemy fleet. They'll overpower us, Aileron said softly. Their technology is superior. A human officer shook her head. Maybe. But they don't know us. Plans formed quickly, not perfect plans, flexible ones. Mines were placed in unexpected locations. Ships were hidden inside asteroids. Old cargo haulers were turned into decoys. Aileron watched in silence, amazed. There were arguments, jokes, even laughter. Fear was present, but it did not stop them. Jack suited up and checked his weapons. Aileron found him in the hangar before he boarded. You do not have to fight, she said. If you hand me over, they will leave. Jack stopped and looked at her. That's not happening. You barely know me. I know enough. She struggled to understand him. You would choose war for a stranger, he shrugged. We choose each other all the time. That's how this place works. The battle began without ceremony. Enemy ships entered the asteroid field confidently, moving in tight formation. They did not expect resistance. They were wrong. Human traps detonated, tearing apart shields. Fighters darted out of nowhere, attacking from blind angles. Decoy ships exploded, masking real threats. When a human ship was hit, another immediately moved to cover it. Jack flew like before, wild and precise. He laughed once when a maneuver worked, then went silent when a friend's ship took damage. He did not retreat. He adapted. Aileron watched from the command center, gripping the edge of the console. This was not elegant warfare. It was desperate, personal, and effective. An enemy cruiser broke through and aimed directly at the station. No, Aileron whispered. Jack's ship slammed into its path, firing everything it had. His shields failed. His weapons overheated. Still, he stayed. At the last second, human bombers struck from below, tearing the cruiser apart. Cheers erupted through the station. The enemy fleet withdrew soon after. Not defeated completely, but shaken, uncertain. When Jack returned, his ship was barely holding together. Aileron ran to him without thinking. He looked tired, his face smudged with grease and sweat, but he smiled when he saw her. Told you, he said. They don't know us. Later, as repairs began and the wounded were treated, Aileron stood at a viewport, watching human ships move with quiet determination. Her communicator chimed. Her people had finally re-established contact. Her advisors appeared on the screen, relief quickly replaced by concern. You must return at once, one said. The court demands it. A political union has been arranged for your safety. Aileron's chest tightened. She looked back at the station, at Jack laughing with his crew, alive because he chose to be. I understand, she said slowly. The connection ended. Jack approached her. Everything okay? She met his eyes. "No," she said honestly, "but I will face it." He nodded. "That's all anyone can do." As the hours passed, Ailerin realized something she had never considered before. For the first time in her life, duty and desire were no longer the same thing, and choosing between them would change everything. The journey back to Lithari space felt longer than it should have. Princess Ailerin stood near the viewing window of the diplomatic cruiser sent to retrieve her, her hands folded calmly, her posture perfect. From the outside, she looked like the same princess who had left her world weeks ago. Inside, she was not. The ship was quiet and smooth, every movement controlled and graceful. Servants moved silently. Guards stood like statues. Everything was as it should be. And yet Ailerin felt as if the air itself was heavy. Human space had been loud, messy, full of sharp edges and strong emotions. People argued openly. They laughed loudly. They made mistakes and fixed them together. Jack's station had been damaged, imperfect, alive. This ship felt like a beautiful cage. Her injury had healed fully, leaving only a faint mark. The doctors said it would fade. Ailerin wondered if she wanted it to. It was proof that something real had happened. When they arrived at her homeworld, the sky glowed with familiar colors. Towering spires of white and silver rose from the surface like frozen light. Music filled the air as her ship landed. Ceremonial guards lined the path. The court waited. Ailerin stepped forward, her long robes flowing, her face calm. Cheers echoed. To them she was a symbol restored. Hope returned. The council chamber filled quickly. Elders, nobles, generals, and advisors spoke over one another. The coup had failed. The traitors were gone. The empire was safe for now. "You were fortunate," one elder said. "That human pilot served his purpose." Ailerin's eyes sharpened. "He is not a tool." Murmurs followed, but the elder continued. "The alliance discussions have resumed. As agreed, you will enter a political marriage to secure our borders." Ailerin had known this was coming. Still, hearing it spoken aloud made her chest tighten. "I will meet this partner," she said carefully, "but first I must speak." The room quieted. "I was saved not by strategy or tradition," she said. "I was saved by choice. Humans fight because they decide to. They protect because they care. They do not bend easily and they should not be controlled." Some scoffed, others listened. "We should not treat them as lesser allies," Ailerin continued. "We should treat them as equals." The council exchanged looks. The idea was dangerous, new, uncomfortable. "We will consider your words," the elder said. "For now, rest. You have done your duty." Duty. That word followed her through the halls as she returned to her chambers. Servants attended her, preparing her garments, speaking softly about celebrations and future plans. Ailerin dismissed them early and stood alone by the window. She activated her communicator. Jack's face appeared after a short delay. He looked tired, one arm in a sling, a bruise near his eye. The background showed the familiar mess of his ship. "Hey," he said. "Good to see you standing in a fancy room." She smiled despite herself. "You look injured." "Other guy looks worse," he replied lightly. Then his expression softened. "So you made it back?" "Yes." A pause stretched between them. "They want you to marry some royal," Jack said quietly. It was not a question. "Yes." Another pause, longer this time. "Well," he said, forcing a smile. "That's how it goes, right? Empires and all that." Ailerin's voice was steady, but her heart was not. "You saved my life. You saved many lives. That's what pilots do." "No," she said, "that is what humans do." Jack looked away. "Listen, Ailerin, whatever happens, I'm glad I met you." The words felt like a closing door. "I am glad too," she said. The connection ended. Days passed. Preparations for the alliance ceremony began. The chosen partner arrived, polite and distant, more interested in power than in her. Everything moved forward as planned. And yet, Ailerin felt herself drifting further away from the path set before her. During a final council meeting, new reports arrived. Border systems were under threat again. Not invasion, pressure, the same enemies testing boundaries. They believe humans will retreat, a general said. They always do eventually. Aileron stood. They will not, she said firmly, not if they are treated with respect. The elder frowned. You speak as if you know them better than we do. I do. Silence filled the chamber. I will travel to the summit, Aileron said, in person, alone. Protests followed, but she did not yield. The summit took place on a neutral station. Delegates from many species attended. Humans arrived last, their ships worn but alert. Jack was there, standing with a small group of pilots and diplomats. When he saw Aileron, surprise flashed across his face. She walked past the nobles and guards and stood beside him. Gasps echoed through the chamber. This treaty, Aileron said loudly, will not place humanity beneath us. It will stand beside us. An elder hissed, Princess. I am choosing, she said, as humans do. Jack looked at her, confused and stunned. She turned to him then, her voice softer but clear. On that world you asked nothing of me. You chose to help, you chose to fight, you chose me as a person. Jack swallowed. Yeah, I did. She took a breath. Every tradition screamed against this moment. Every lesson warned her away. Still, she spoke. In my empire, bonds are formed by command, she said. But I have learned another way. She met his eyes. Jack called her, she said. Will you choose me? The room was silent. Jack blinked. Are you asking what I think you're asking? He rubbed the back of his neck, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. I don't have a palace, he said slowly, or a title. My ship barely works half the time. Aileron smiled. I do not want a palace, I want honesty. Jack exhaled, a short laugh escaping him. Well, he said, when a princess asks you straight like that, he straightened, suddenly serious. I choose you, he said, not because of who you are, but because of who you decide to be. Aileron felt warmth spread through her chest, steady and strong. The summit erupted into noise, arguments, shouts, but it no longer mattered. The treaty was rewritten. Humanity stood free, allied but unbound. The empire adjusted slowly, unwillingly, but inevitably. Later, as Jack's ship prepared to depart, Aileron stood beside him on the hangar deck. She looked once more at the shining symbols of her old life, then at the battered ship that had changed everything. Are you afraid? Jack asked. Yes, she said honestly. He smiled. Good. Means it's real. She stepped aboard. As the ship lifted off, no crowns, no chains, no commands followed her, only stars. And for the first time, Princess Aileron was not following a destiny written for her. She was flying toward one she had chosen. The stars outside the viewport moved slowly as Jack's ship traveled through open space. Princess Aileron sat in the co-pilot seat, her hands resting in her lap, watching the endless lights pass by. She was no longer wearing royal robes. Instead, she wore simple human clothes that fit her movement better. They felt strange, but also freeing. Behind them, the station and the shouting voices of politics were already far away. Jack focused on the controls, but his thoughts were louder than the engines. He had agreed to something that still felt unreal, a princess, an empire, and now a future that no longer followed any map he had ever known. You can still turn back, he said suddenly. Aileron looked at him. Do you want me to? He hesitated. No, I just want you to be sure. She nodded slowly. I am sure for the first time in my life. The ship received a transmission. Jack frowned as he checked it. That was fast, he muttered. The message was from the human outpost. Enemy movements had increased. Not just near the borders, but deeper into human space. The same forces that had hunted Aileron were now pushing harder, testing humanity's response. They will not stop, Aileron said quietly. They believe humans are divided. Jack smiled grimly. Then they haven't been paying attention. They arrived at the outpost to find controlled chaos. Ships were being repaired. Supplies moved quickly. Pilots gathered, talking in low voices. When Aileron stepped onto the hangar deck, conversation stopped. She felt the weight of their stares, but she did not look away. Jack spoke first. This is Princess Aileron. She's here because she chose to be. One of the officers crossed her arms. "That's not going to make things simpler." Ailerin stepped forward. "I did not come to be protected," she said clearly. "I came to stand with you." That earned silence. Then, slowly, respect. The enemy attack came sooner than expected. Not a single battle, but many small strikes, raids, ambushes, attempts to pull human forces apart. Humanity answered in its own way. They did not meet the enemy head-on every time. Sometimes they retreated, only to strike from unexpected angles later. They shared information freely. Civilian ships helped military ones. No one waited for orders that did not make sense. Ailerin watched it all from the command center. She saw fear, yes, loss too, but she also saw something her empire had lost long ago: trust. One night, as alarms quieted for a moment, Ailerin found Jack sitting alone near his ship. He was cleaning a small crack in the hull with careful hands. "You should rest," she said. "So should you," he replied. She sat beside him anyway. For a while neither spoke. "I was raised to believe love was a weakness," she said softly, "something that clouded judgment." Jack chuckled. "Yeah, humans tried that idea too, didn't work out." She looked at him. "I am afraid I will fail, that I will bring danger to your people." Jack set the tool down and faced her fully. "Danger was coming with or without you. What matters is what we do together." She studied his face. Not perfect, not eternal, but real. The next battle was the worst yet. A full enemy fleet moved into the system, confident and organized. Against them, human ships looked like scraps held together by stubbornness. Jack flew at the center of it all. Ailerin was on the bridge, coordinating messages between human pilots and sharing what she knew of enemy tactics. For the first time, her knowledge was not used to control, but to protect. The fight lasted hours. Ships were lost. Others barely survived. At one moment, Jack's ship was hit hard, spinning out of formation. "Jack!" Ailerin cried. He gritted his teeth and stabilized the ship. "Still here." They pushed on. When the enemy finally retreated, it was not because they had been destroyed completely. It was because they no longer understood their opponent. Humans had not broken. In the aftermath, word spread quickly. Other species began to watch. Some offered quiet support. Others reconsidered old assumptions. Ailerin stood before a gathering of human leaders days later. Not as a ruler, but as a voice. "My empire once believed strength meant control," she said. "You have shown me that strength can also mean choice." A human engineer raised a hand. "So what happens now?" she smiled. "Now we build something new." Life did not suddenly become easy. There were arguments, cultural misunderstandings, moments where Ailerin felt lost between two worlds, but she was no longer alone. Jack and Ailerin learned each other slowly. He taught her how to fly, badly at first. She taught him patience, even though he claimed to have none. They laughed, they argued, they listened. One evening, as their ship drifted between missions, Jack spoke again. "You know," he said, "marrying a princess usually comes with a lot of rules." Ailerin tilted her head. "Does that trouble you?" he smiled. "No, just means we'll break the ones that don't make sense." She laughed, a sound that once would have been unthinkable in a royal chamber. Far away, in halls of polished stone, elders spoke of change they could no longer stop. Empires shifted. Alliances reformed. And in the space between stars, a human pilot and an alien princess continued forward, not as symbols, not as legends, but as two beings who chose each other in a universe that never expected it. The future remained uncertain. But for the first time it was theirs. The war did not end with one retreat. It only changed shape. Weeks passed, then months. The enemy stopped attacking openly and began working in shadows. Trade routes were disrupted. Communication relays failed. Small colonies went silent. Fear spread quietly, like a slow illness. Princess Ailerin felt the weight of it every day. She stood in the command room of the human outpost, watching reports scroll across the screens. Human officers spoke freely around her now. They no longer treated her as a guest or a symbol. She had earned her place. Still, doubt followed her. Some nights when the station slept, she walked alone through the observation halls, staring into the stars. She wondered how many lives were being lost because she had chosen this path. She wondered if her empire would ever forgive her. Jack noticed the change before she spoke of it. "You're thinking too hard again," he said one evening, handing her a cup of strong human tea she still did not fully enjoy. She accepted it anyway. "I am responsible for much of this." Jack leaned against the wall. "You didn't start the fire. You just decided not to run from it." "That does not erase the cost." "No," he agreed, "but it gives the cost meaning." The word stayed with her. The turning point came from an unexpected place. A damaged enemy ship drifted into the system, broadcasting a weak distress signal. Human sensors tracked it for hours, unsure if it was a trap. Eventually, a small team was sent to investigate. Aileron insisted on going. Jack argued at first. "You don't have to prove anything." "I am not proving," she replied calmly. "I am choosing." They found the ship barely holding together. Inside were survivors, young, frightened, and clearly unprepared for the war they had been sent to fight. Their commander was injured and unconscious. The soldiers expected execution. Instead, humans offered medical aid. Aileron spoke to them in their own language. She did not threaten. She did not demand. She listened. For the first time, the enemy spoke freely. They were not conquerors by nature. They were bound by a rigid system that punished hesitation and rewarded obedience. Retreat was death. Failure was erased from history. "You fight because you are ordered," Aileron said softly. "Yes," one replied. "Is there another way?" She thought of Jack, of human pilots who chose fear and flew anyway. "Yes," she said, "there is." The prisoners were treated fairly. They were not used as leverage. When they were returned in a neutral exchange, they carried stories back with them. Stories of humans who healed enemies, of an alien princess who spoke of choice. The enemy leadership reacted with anger at first. Then with worry. Doubt was spreading. At the same time, Aileron's empire could no longer ignore the changes. Border systems stabilized where humans were present. Trade increased. Smaller species began asking for human protection instead of imperial oversight. An elder from Aileron's world requested a private meeting. The message arrived late at night. Aileron stared at the screen for a long time before answering. The meeting took place on a quiet diplomatic vessel. The elder looked older than she remembered, his posture less rigid. "You have caused great disruption," he said without greeting. "Yes," Aileron replied, "and great survival." He studied her carefully. "You have become something unexpected." She met his gaze. "So has the galaxy," he sighed. "We built our empire on control because we feared chaos. And in doing so," she said gently, "you forgot trust." Silence stretched between them. Finally, the elder bowed his head, not deeply, not fully, but enough. "We will not force your return," he said, "nor your marriage." Relief washed over her, slow and heavy. "But know this," he added, "the future you are shaping will be dangerous." She smiled faintly. "The future always is." When she returned to the outpost, Jack was waiting. "Well?" he asked. She stepped into his arms without answering. He held her tightly, no questions needed. The final conflict came not as a massive battle, but as a decision. The enemy leadership requested talks, not a trap, not a delay, a meeting. Humans arrived in simple ships, no grand display. Aileron stood beside them, not above. The enemy representatives looked tired, afraid, honest. "We cannot win," their leader said, "and we no longer wish to." Terms were discussed, not of surrender but of change. Borders were redrawn, systems were freed, command structures loosened. It was not perfect. It was not clean, but it was real. When the agreement was signed, there was no cheering, just quiet understanding. Later, as Jack's ship drifted peacefully for the first time in a long while, Aileron sat beside him in the cockpit. "What happens now?" he asked. She considered the question. "Now," she said, "we live with what we chose." He smiled. Sounds fair. They did not return to her empire. They did not settle in one place. They traveled, helped rebuild, taught and learned in equal measure. Some called Ailerin a traitor. Others called her a bridge. Jack did not care what they called her. To him, she was simply Ailerin. One day, far from any capital or battlefield, they stood together on a quiet world with blue skies and open fields. No guards, no titles. Jack looked at her, nervous in a way he had never been in combat. "So," he said, "we kind of skipped a lot of normal steps." She raised an eyebrow. "Humans do enjoy disorder." He took her hands. "I don't have an empire to offer or promises about the future, just today. And tomorrow, if we're lucky." She squeezed his hands gently. "I have had promises all my life," she said. "What I want is choice." He nodded. "Then choose me." She smiled, bright and unafraid. "I already have." Above them, the stars watched in silence. Not as witnesses to legend,